Houston's largest international and independent film festival is almost here. The 16th annual Houston Cinema Arts Festival runs November 7th through the 17th, featuring over 40 unique film events, workshops, performances, and more. Just the first week, you can see the coming-of-age film Tendaberry. Then, the 30th anniversary screening of Reality Bites, and Swamp Dogg gets his pool painted with a performance from Swamp Dogg himself at the newly reopened River Oaks Theater. Get your all-access passes, which include all the screenings, performances, and exclusive parties at cinemahtx.org/HCAF. Single tickets are available too. November is the month to explore Pearland's dining scene with Pearland Restaurant Weeks. From Boiling Dragon's famous Dragon Seafood Fried Rice to your new favorite Chicken Fried Chicken at Magnolia Cajun Comfort, there's a Pearland restaurant to satisfy every palate. Support small and discover neighborhood gems in Pearland this fall with Pearland Restaurant Weeks running November 1st through the 30th. See the menus at visitpearland.com/restaurant weeks and start planning your weekend today. Today on CityCast Houston, Election Day is almost here, and election integrity is a concern brought up by more and more people. So we're talking to an actual election judge at Houston's biggest voting center to see if those concerns are warranted. Poppy Northcutt has been an election judge for over 10 years and was also a trailblazing woman engineer inside NASA during the Apollo years. She's joining me to talk about what goes on behind the scenes to make sure that Houstonians' ballots are counted. It's Monday, November 4th. I'm Raheel Ramzanali, and here's what Houston's talking about. Hey, Poppy, welcome into CityCast Houston. I'm so excited to chat with you. How are you?
I'm just fine. It's good to chat with you as well.
Now, you have so many titles. You're an attorney, a Presidential Medal of Freedom recipient, the president of the Houston chapter of the National Organization of Women, the first female engineer to work in NASA's mission control. Am I leaving something out? I think I mentioned most of them, right?
Well, it's coming up on election time, so you haven't mentioned the one that's most pertinent to that. And that's that I'm a presiding judge at a large polling place in Harris County.
That is why you're on, because we are talking about one of your most important roles, being an election judge. For our listeners who don't know, what exactly does an election judge do?
Well, an election judge does a lot of things. Each polling place will have a presiding and an alternate judge. The presiding judge will hire the staff that works at the polling place. The county pays them, but the election judge actually is responsible for getting those folks lined up and making sure that they get trained in how to handle the various procedures. And then the election judge will have to be there along with the staff to set up the polling place. And during the course of the election judge is responsible for provisional voters and other issues that may come up, canceling mail ballots, for example, and other issues, procedural issues that come up on the voting, as well as sort of policing. If there's poll watchers that are overstepping their bounds or campaigning is going on where it shouldn't be going on, the election judge is responsible for that. And then at the end of the day, the election judge has to do a lot of paperwork to do an accounting for the ballots, each one of the machines, make sure that the equipment is all packed up, and then we have to close it up after it's done.
So that's a lot of responsibility, the hiring, getting everybody ready, making sure they are trained, and then you also have to get the polling place ready. But what will your day look like tomorrow when you're overseeing the busiest polling place in Harris County, which is the Metropolitan Multi-Service Center on West Gray? Now, just for some context, it had over 2,600 voters last November, and that was a midterm, right? So imagine now when you get ready for a general election, how crazy is it going to get?
Well, I don't know how crazy it's going to get. I'm expecting a big turnout, and it's always a big turnout at that particular polling place. We're going to have a lot, of equipment that we're going to be setting up. We're going to have 7 lines, okay, 7 controllers. We'll have 72 voting machines.
Mm.
But, it's going to be busy, no doubt about it.
So when all that is done, right, like the last person casts their ballot, are you responsible then to get the votes to the central location for them to be counted? Does somebody come to pick it up? What happens then?
No, we get the stuff to Election Central. We have to get the
Okay.
equipment packed up. And some of the equipment, the county comes and picks up at a later date, okay?
Mm.
But the election judge has to take certain things to Election Central and turn them in. Our job is far from done when we technically call this a polling place, because we have to do a lot of paperwork that's accounting for all of the ballots and letting them know how many provisionals were cast, how many of this were cast, and so forth. Not the individual votes, but the total number of ballots. And we have to get each one of the ballot boxes closed up and so forth. So wrapping up the polling place itself and doing all that paperwork can take quite a while. That's why sometimes you're not hearing results as quickly as you would like to hear.
Yep.
And at my polling place, I wouldn't be surprised if at 7 o'clock we still have a line. So we have to vote everybody that's in line at 7 o'clock. I may not start, pulling the machines down until, 8:30 or so. Who knows?
After all that paperwork is done, what time do you go to bed?
Late. It is a
Yeah.
long day because I have to be there at 5:30. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
And before I leave the house, before 5:30, not only do I have to get up and have a cup of coffee, but I have to load the electronic equipment I'm responsible for taking to the polling place into the vehicle. Okay. And it's heavy and it's going to be a lot of equipment because of the size of this election. So I'll probably be getting up like around 4 o'clock that morning, So by
Yeah.
the time I get done, it'll be close to midnight. I will be a basket case.
Oh my gosh. Do you even get time to eat? I mean, it just sounds like a long day.
Barely.
Wow.
We'll have a nice spread of food. Part of what I'll take will be some food for the election workers, okay?
Good.
And we technically get 30 minutes for lunch, but I'm arriving before we have breakfast,
Yeah.
So, hopefully we'll be able to have a snack here and there in between, as the day goes by. By the time I get out, I will be thirsty, I'll be hungry, and I'll be dead tired.
Mhm. Well, and it's going to be leave Poppy alone. Just let me have my moment after this exhausting day. When do you vote, by the way?
Well, I'll probably vote that day. Only one time did I get so busy that I didn't get to vote. And
Oh, no.
I had a big equipment failure and I was really worried about getting other people to vote and my equipment coming back up. And I got home and I went, oh, I never got to vote.
Oh, oh no. One thing I love about Houston is that it's full of amazing stories. Here's one that I just learned about. In 1940, a girl named Ruth Steinfeld and her family were deported from Germany to one of the first Nazi concentration camps in France. She and her sister managed to escape with the help of a rescue group, and Ruth ended up making a life here in Houston. Now, her portrait is part of a new exhibit called Facing Survival by David Casson. The exhibit memorializes over 24 survivors at Holocaust Museum Houston, and they really make you think about the resiliency of the human spirit. Facing Survival is on view now through January 5th at Holocaust Museum Houston, and the museum is free on Thursdays from 2 to 5 p.m., and kids 18 and under and college students are always free at Holocaust Museum Houston. Learn more at hmh.org/Facing Survival.
This episode is brought to you by Etsy.
Oh.
Hear that?
Okay. Thank you.
Etsy knows these aren't the sounds of holiday gifting. Well, not the ones you're hoping for. You want squeals of delight, happy tears,
How did you?
and spontaneously written songs of joy.
I am so happy. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah.
Okay, the song needs a bit of work, but anyway, to get those reactions, make sure everyone on your list feels heard with handmade, handpicked, and designed gifts from small shops on Etsy. Gifts like personalized jewelry, custom artwork, cozy style items, vintage pieces, and home decor to celebrate all of your favorite people and their specific kind of special. For original gifts that say, I get you, Etsy has it.
There's so much that goes into making sure that every citizen can cast their vote and feel safe and secure and heard, right? Because you want to make sure your vote is counted. But we always hear about election integrity, it seems like, in every headline. What is going on? And do you feel like our local elections here in the greater Houston area are secure?
Our elections are very secure. Anybody that ever worked in an election poll knows how secure they are. I mean, we have all sorts of double checks and safety checks and very rigorous accounting that goes on. You know, we're going to vote millions of people. And yes, there's probably going to be somebody that makes a mistake on something. Okay. I mean, maybe they forget to get a signature on some piece of paper that they're supposed to get. That's going to happen whenever you have that many people voting. But in terms of the number of those things that happen, considering how many people we vote, it's remarkably small.
Yeah, and that's such an important point that you just made. I think about my own experiences, and I've been fortunate to have great experiences when voting. I have zero issues, right? But then I often see people at other polling locations who end up waiting for hours, or maybe there's not enough paper.
Well, I mean, that thing about the not enough paper, I think that was just some sort of weird anomaly. My polling place had plenty of paper at that time. I don't know how that mismatch occurred. You know, we may have lines. The best way to avoid those long lines is to go early vote, okay?
Yeah.
Now, of course, election day's tomorrow. It's a little too late for these people to early vote. It's early voting is closed. But that's the biggest way to avoid that. The other way that you can avoid those long lines is to cast mail ballots if you're eligible to cast a mail ballot. But you have to think of that in advance. Now, some people will have gotten a mail ballot, they won't have returned it, and they won't feel comfortable about casting a mail ballot because there has been a lot of disinformation out there about the safety of mail ballots. If you are someone who wants to come in and vote in person anyway, you've decided you don't want to use that mail ballot, the main thing I would say to them is bring that ballot with you because it will cut the paperwork and your time in the polling place in half. If you bring the ballot with you, we can cancel it right there, okay? And you will vote regular way. But if you don't bring it with you, we'll cancel the ballot, but you'll have to vote provisionally. And that's because, for all we know, your ballot is somewhere out there, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And, we can't vote you regular way when that ballot is floating around somewhere.
Now, that's a really good tip right there. Do you have other tips to make things more efficient for people who are voting tomorrow?
Well, the other thing that you should do is go to harrisvotes.com. And first of all, make sure you're registered in Harris County. Every election, I'll have somebody who will show up and, oh, yeah, well, I'm registered in Fort Bend, as it turns out. I never bothered to register in Harris County. I'll vote them provisionally if they want to vote, but it's not going to count. They're not registered in Harris County. So make sure you know where you're registered and you need to vote where you're registered. If it were still early voting going on and for some reason you were stuck out of county, say you were from Pecos County or something like that and couldn't get back, if you do that, you can vote a limited ballot so that you can still vote in the presidential race. But you have to do that during early voting time, and there's just one location you could do it at. I mean, that's a very special situation. Now, the other thing is, check your voter registration. Make sure you're registered, harrisvotes.com. And also, you can download your ballot so you can see exactly what's on it. And this
That's
is
such an important one.
long, long ballot in Harris County. A lot of judgeships, and every one of those races is important. So download that ballot, You can bring your sample ballot with you to the polling place. You cannot have your phone on. You can't, no electronic devices
Yep.
can be operating in the polling place. So, bring that sample ballot with you, or if you have, you want to take somebody's endorsement list, that's fine. Bring that with you, but you're not going to be able to use that phone inside the polling place.
Yeah, I love that. Printing it out has always been one of my tips. I always tell my family, especially my parents, are a little bit older and they get overwhelmed when they go inside and they're about to cast their ballot and they're like, they'll call me afterwards, like, what was that? Like, there's so many different things. So I always tell them, print it out, carry it with you. You're allowed to have it. And, research a little bit ahead of time, get familiar with the ballot and take your time. Do not feel rushed.
Right.
When you are casting your vote, do not feel rushed. Sometimes people feel that because there's a long line on election day, but don't feel rushed. You have time. It's okay.
harrisvotes.com also tries to keep some information there about polling places, where you can check how long the line is at different polling places. So you can also check there so that you're going to one where you'll have less of a wait than at other places.
Poppy, in previous elections, you've talked about how you've been worried about poll watchers and people campaigning outside. And with this being such a heated election, whether it be the Senate race, of course, the presidential race, judges, whatever it may be, is it weighing more on you right now this time around?
Not exactly. I mean, I'm a lot more concerned about the volume and being able to handle all the people, okay, as expeditiously as possible. There's, we're going to have poll watchers, and I'm used to having poll watchers. I'm not really worried about that. I mean, if we have somebody who's obstreperous and really a problem, I mean, that's the county attorney and the constable's job to deal with that. And yeah, there'll be somebody who is stepping across the campaign line. So I may have to go out and tell somebody back off a little bit. But,
Yeah.
That's really sort of a minor routine kind of thing. I want everybody to vote. So, show up. And if you're in line, just remember to be thankful that we have the right to vote in this country and to, bring a
Yeah.
smile with you, bring a bottle of water. Never know what the weather's going to be exactly. So just be prepared.
Absolutely. I mentioned this earlier, but you used to work at NASA where you were one of the first women engineers and helped save Apollo 13 in the space race. You had such a big impact. Now, do any of those skills come in handy when you're working the polls?
Well, I mean, one of the skills is that you have to be calm in case of unexpected things happening. So, I mean, that's just, that's sort of a mindset that you develop, that you have to be able to keep your cool if something goes wrong. And also that you try to plan ahead. You're always trying to think ahead about what might happen so that you're prepared. So yeah, I think that was helpful. Now, something to, I always like to make sure people understand, I did not work for NASA itself. I worked for a contractor. In fact, most of the people that worked on the space program
Yep.
worked for contractors.
Okay, so working as a contractor and still, look, you are working within the building of NASA Johnson Space Center, right? Like being there, you had a chance to see some incredible stuff and innovation and how efficient we can become, right? Do you ever get frustrated when you look at the inefficiency sometimes of us voting? Like for me, for example, I always get frustrated. Like, why can't we just vote online? We literally give all of our private information, our tax returns, our social security numbers, all this online for other governmental purposes, but we can't do it online. It makes it so inefficient, in my opinion. Have you noticed any of these inefficiencies that you would like to fix?
Well, my bigger concern isn't about voting online. My bigger concern is that we can't register to vote online. I certainly think that we could improve things vastly by making registration to vote a lot easier than it is. Part of the problem about making things more efficient is that the legislature, every time they meet, every 2 years, they're going to go in and tinker with something. And no matter how well-meaning they may be, they don't always think about the down the road consequences of the tinkering that they do, because every change they make has consequences down the line in terms of the efficiency and the ease of voting and ease of handling things. What's particularly difficult these days are some of the changes that they made to mail balloting. They've made it a lot more complicated, which has resulted in mail ballots being rejected. These people basically were deprived of their right to vote because there's so many little procedural steps that can be awkward, especially when you're talking about the target audience. The primary target audience for mail balloting are people who are over 65, are people who have some sort of handicap. And, I understand the concern about security, but I also understand a lot of concern about being sensitive and trying to make it accessible for the people that most need accessibility.
Yeah, that's an inefficiency that doesn't get talked about enough. And I'm glad you pointed that out because definitely that's such an important part of making things more efficient and equitable for everybody. So I love that you mentioned that.
People need to understand that if they have a physical handicap, for example, if they have trouble standing or whatever, things like that, all of our polling places are supposed to accommodate that. And those folks get to go to the front of the line if there's a line. Okay. Somebody on a walker is not going to have to stand forever. They can go to the front of the line. They just need to go up and find an election worker and let them know. And, if we need to find them a chair, we'll find them a chair. We also have curbside voting that's available at every polling place. Now, that needs to not be abused by people coming up and trying to curbside vote that don't need to curbside vote. But, it's certainly available. And, we encourage people that need to use that to use that.
Poppy, what made you want to become an election judge?
Actually, a long time ago, one of my best friends was an election judge. And I'd get off work on a Tuesday on election day, and I'd come in to her polling place and help her pack up the equipment and help her drive to the polling place to drop this stuff off because you're dead tired. Okay. It's nice to have somebody who will drive you and who will make sure you get to eat afterwards. So I would do that. And then I became an election clerk. This is back when you had to vote in your precinct. We didn't have big polling centers like we do now where you can vote anywhere in Harris County. When we were assigned precincts and we had to vote there, the election judge contacted me. He was moving out of the precinct and he wanted to know if I would take over because I had worked as an election clerk. And I said, yeah.
Oh, that's nice. How long have you been an election judge now?
I'm not sure. Probably something like 14 years. I don't know. It's been a while.
Oh, no, it all runs together, right?
It does.
Yeah. How much has it changed in that time frame?
Well, it's changed a lot because we used to, have to check people in on printed out lists. And then, we had these big machine things that we cast our vote on where you pull these little levers down.
Yeah.
So having gone electronic, the equipment has certainly changed a lot.
That's awesome. Now, if someone wants to become an election judge, how can they apply? What does the process look like? What does it involve?
Well, if they go to harrisvotes.com, they'll see something on there that says election worker. And my advice is try to be an election worker, an election clerk before you're an election judge, because it can be pretty overwhelming if you walk in cold and you've never done an election before and you have to do all of this accounting. So, become an election clerk, sign up. Good to contact your political party because they also can help you in that process. They always need election clerks. And one of the programs that I most like for people to know about is that we have a state law that provides that high school students can work as election clerks as young as age 16. When they're between age 16 and age 18, they can be what's called a student election clerk. And they get paid like regular election clerks. In Harris County, that's $17 an hour, which is a lot more than they earn at Subway. And, they have to have permission of a parent or guardian. And if election day is on a Tuesday, on a school day, they also have to have their school principal sign off. But there's a provision in law for them to do that. It gives them job experience. It gives them experience to the process. And they make money. It looks good on their resume, on their school
Yeah.
application. And they're wonderful to have at the polling places. They really are. The voters love seeing them there.
That is so cool. Final question before I let you go. You once said that working in election is an act of faith. At the time, you said because elections, they matter. Do you still have that feeling?
I do, absolutely. I think there's going to be some race that's close in Harris County. There will be. And your vote, your one vote will make a difference. Okay? A lot of times people dismiss voting the down ballot races. They think only the presidential or the governor or whatever is important. But the truth of the matter is that, the water pressure that you have, how floods are handled. We certainly have floods and bad weather. Those things happen at the local level. If your car gets stolen, it's going to be handled at a district court here in Harris County. So every one of those races matter. And they're not all high visibility, but we need your voice to have the kind of city that you want to have.
Poppy, get some rest today. It's going to be a long day tomorrow for you, and best of luck. Where are you going to eat right after you drop off the votes? What restaurant are you going to?
I'm not going to be going to a restaurant. I'll probably already have something stuck away, ready to put in the microwave when I get home.
Thank you, Poppy. That was Poppy Northcutt, election judge and trailblazing engineer at NASA during the Apollo years. As you heard throughout this interview, Election Day is tomorrow, so please share this episode to at least 3 friends to remind them as well. You can also go to votetexas.gov to find the nearest polling location to you. For more election news, subscribe to our daily newsletter, Hey Houston, with the info in our show notes. Thanks. That will do it for today. I'm Raheel Ramzanali. Thank you for listening, and I hope you learned something new. I shouldn't ask this right now because I should ask in the interview, but does your preparation just start a few days before, or do you just show up on election day?
Oh, no, you have to prepare, especially if you're at a polling place like I'm at, because I'm assigned the biggest polling place in Harris County.
The busiest one.
Absolutely.